Elijah and the prophets of Baal. During a time of severe drought in Israel, King Ahab and his people had turned away from the Lord and worshipped Baal, a false god. The prophet Elijah, a servant of the true God, was called to confront this idolatry. Elijah approached King Ahab and challenged him to a contest to prove who was the real God, the Lord or Baal. He instructed Ahab to gather all the people of Israel, along with the 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, at Mount Carmel. When the people gathered, Elijah stood before them and asked, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." The people remained silent. Elijah then proposed the terms of the contest. 2 bulls would be prepared for sacrifice, one for Baal's prophets and one for Elijah. Each would place their bull on an altar, but not light a fire. Instead, they would call upon their respective gods to send fire from heaven to consume the sacrifice. The god who answered with fire would be acknowledged as the true God. The prophets of Baal went first. They prepared their altar, placed the bull on it, and began calling on Baal from morning until noon, shouting, "O Baal, answer us!" They danced and leaped around the altar, but there was no response. At noon, Elijah began to mock them, saying, "Shout louder! Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." The prophets of Baal shouted louder and even cut themselves with swords and spears until their blood flowed, as was their custom. Yet, despite their frantic efforts, there was no voice, no answer, and no fire. Then it was Elijah's turn. He repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down, using 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. He arranged the wood, placed the bull on it, and then did something extraordinary. He dug a trench around the altar and had the people pour 4 large jars of water over the offering and the wood. He instructed them to do this 3 times until the water filled the trench and soaked everything. Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant. Answer me, Lord, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Immediately, fire from the Lord fell from heaven. It consumed not only the sacrifice, but also the wood, the stones, the soil, and even the water in the trench. The people fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God." At Elijah's command, the people seized the prophets of Baal, and they were put to death at the Kishon Valley. Following this dramatic display of God's power, Elijah prayed for rain, and soon the skies grew dark with clouds, and a heavy rain ended the long drought. Through this event, the Lord demonstrated his supremacy over false gods and called his people back to true worship, proving that he alone is the living God.